All right. I am making a phone call to Officer Sean Holloway. Chances are that this is a general number that's in Cheyenne County, the next county over. Because it's in a different jurisdiction, gaining access to that evidence is a pain in the ass. Lucky for me, I've got this computer back, the computer that was stolen illegally by the officers in Rawlins, Wyoming, who started off bullying me. Why is it the cops feel the need to do that? Now, then there's officers like Officer Hahn, who, yeah, he's very condescending and he pretends to be friendly now. He's an asshole. It is awful I'm going through this. You're right. Thank you for noticing, Pam. So let's call this number. Let's see if Sean Holloway is a good cop or if he's full of shit. I hope he's a good cop. He's probably full of shit. But that's just my assumption, and I hope that this man proves me wrong. 308-874-3305. Press the ring button and put it on speakerphone. Hello, my name is Sean David Schwartz. I'm trying to get a hold of Deputy Sean Holloway.
Okay, he's not in the office right now.
All right. Is he on duty today?
No, he is not.
All right. How about Deputy Bo Fisher?
Okay, can you hold on for just a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, he is not in the office right now either. Can I have the deputy on duty give you a call?
Who is the deputy on duty?
It is Deputy Hahn.
Not a chance in hell. I'm trying to make a report about that officer.
Okay, I can leave a message for the sheriff if you'd like.
Well, ma'am, the thing is, I'm trying to take Officer Hahn to court, Sheriff Scott DaCosta to court, and two former officers who are allowed to flee state to escape prosecution. And that would be former Deputy Jordan Anderson and former Deputy Cody Selhorst.
Okay.
So leaving a message for the sheriff or for Deputy Hahn would do absolutely no good. That would just give my predators access to what it is that I'm doing, as well as giving them access to retaliate against me yet again for their wrongdoing and for me trying to turn them in for their wrongdoing.
Okay, so you're wanting to talk to another deputy about turning them in?
Yes, ma'am. That's why I was asking for Sean Holloway in specific, because he was the officer who told me that he would work with me.
Okay, I can leave a message for him, but I can't guarantee when he will call you back.
All right. There's one other officer, and his name is Adam. I believe it's Adam. His last name is Greenman, Greenman. Is he still employed here?
I don't give out that information.
All right. Well, I would hope that that would be public information, which officers work in the county that I live in. But since it's not public information, I suppose that's something I'm going to have to write my local senator about.
I can leave a message for Deputy Holloway if you'd like.
I certainly would like. On that message, I'd like you to let him know that I will be recording our conversations as well as making that information accessible to the public.
Okay, and what is your name again?
Sean Schwartz.
And your phone number?
They already have my phone number, so there's no need to give it to them.
Okay, I will let him know.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Now, part of the problem is calling 911 doesn't work. I'm going to give you this officer's information. This is Deputy Sean Holloway. Badge number 9782. This is another one of the officers that showed up yesterday. Badge number 9783. Just so you know, I can read both upside down and backwards. I'm pretty good at that. When I was 6 years old, my mother was dragged out of rehab to sign paperwork for me to be committed to Centennial Peaks Mental Hospital in Boulder County, Colorado. Boulder County, Colorado is where my abuse first started, where the physical abuse and the mental abuse and the rampant druggings started. They dragged my mother out of rehab so that she could sign that paperwork. And while we were sitting there at the table with the doctor at Centennial Peaks in 1986, I read the word schizophrenic upside down. This is my very first day there. It was somebody else's file that I was reading. Of course, the first thing he did was close it up, but he was surprised that a 6-year-old could read the word schizophrenic. Not only that, but it was upside down because he was on the other side of the table or the other side of the desk. I've always been highly intelligent. Centennial Peaks was the first place that doctors ever had an argument over whether I was autistic or not. My very first day in Centennial Peaks, I hadn't gotten any sleep the night before and I fell asleep. I was slammed to the floor for this. I was on massive quantities of drugs in that facility. That's how they deal with human beings. You're not worth listening to. These officers took part nationwide in covering up for the wrongdoing of other officers and the FBI. Now, there were several officers that I spoke with that claimed that they were going to help and just never did. Hey, Walter. Oh, good boy. Oh, you fucking bastard. That is not the end of you I want to talk to. Mm. Mm. Oh, that is too kind of you. All right, Walker, you're going to have to go downstairs before Walter comes up here and starts being a pain in the ass. I love animals too. All right, downstairs. Walter, downstairs. He doesn't know that command yet. We'll get him learned. Oh, such a good boy. Such a good boy. Oh, fuck. Walker's up here now, too. Downstairs. Downstairs. Eh, eh, eh. Go, go, go. He thinks it's playtime. All right, so every time that I've tried to go in to speak to officers, they've pulled some shady bullshit, and I have not had access to their recordings or their body cameras. Literally every single time that I broke the law, it was to try to force the police to do their fucking jobs. The reason I was asking people to go in with me is to force the police to do their jobs. Because when you're trying to turn in police officers for not doing their jobs, their fellow officers will cover for them. Fuckers. Yes, I understand. You want to cuddle with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's because you're spoiled. You are spoiled. It's playtime, isn't it? Oh, ah, 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 ah. You guys fight like sissies. You guys fight like sissies. How are you ever going to protect me like that? And that is exactly how you're not supposed to play with dogs. See, because if he does this to a child, it doesn't matter that he's just playing. He'll get killed for it. If you grab a hold of his bottom jaw, it can kind of annoy him. But if you grab a hold of his tongue, hey, that's a little bit too rough. All right. Hey, out, out, hey, hey. I don't exactly have the back for playing with him anyway. I don't know what breed the little one is. I think he's a mutt. He's cute though. Really? You gonna come right back upstairs? Yes, I hear that fly too. I see him. Are you gonna get him? You're out killing him for you. uh Oh, I got him for sure. All right, Walter, downstairs. Cat. I think I'm gonna have to take them outside to play for a minute. They both have a habit of jumping the fence. The big one jumps right over it, and the little one crawls right under it. There's some issues with one of the city workers that make it important that they don't get out again. One of those city workers is one of my witnesses, and he and I do not get along. There's a reason for that, too. Now, as far as a lot of the things that people keep telling me to do, the officers will only pretend to take a report from me and only over the telephone. That's because over the telephone, I can't show them evidence, and they have what's called plausible deniability. Plausible deniability means that if they didn't see it, it didn't happen. And every officer that I've dealt with has done this, every one of them. Officer Hahn only pretended to do his job because that was the one time that somebody went in with me to go speak to the police. Her name is Molly Smith, and she works at Pumpkin Pantry here in Chapel, Nebraska. She is currently out for 6 to 8 weeks because she had surgery on her knee. She had knee replacement, and she was allergic to the cement that they put in. So they have to replace knee replacement. For me, one of the options that Candace Bondurant had discussed with me because of my degenerative disc disease, is going to a specialist outside of Boulder and having cement put in my back. I don't know if I'm allergic to it or not. I do know that that doesn't sound like a very good option. Another thing that was discussed with me was the option of fusing my vertebrae. That is another not good idea. Candace Bondurant, when I was right after Natalie Bollinger was killed, I went to Candace Bondurant's. And now, mind you, Candace is not a bad person by nature. However, she is afraid of consequences, and she also doesn't want to admit that her choices are hers. So she blames her choices and decisions on other people. If the things that she said were true, that wouldn't be blaming her choices on other people. See, if the things that she said in 2016 were true, she wouldn't have told me two different versions. First, she told me that the reason I had to leave her place was because her ex, his name is James, didn't want any guys around his kids, which I can understand that. But when I was in Virginia, she told me a different story. She told me it was because I had quit my job. I didn't quit my job. I got fired because I was having heart issues. I was supposed to rest up. Now, that's something that you don't get to do. As far as all of the things that I needed to do that the doctors told me to do, I was unable to do those things because of money, because of homelessness, because of time constraints, and because of abuse. See, the doctors told me that I'm not supposed to move around a whole bunch, and I have to move around a whole bunch. The doctors told me not to lift more than 10 pounds, but I have to. My gear weighs more than 10 pounds. That bag of evidence weighs more than 10 pounds. The box that I had in California weighs more than 10 pounds. Candace Bondurant belongs in prison for what she did, in my personal opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, lots of people did lots of really good things for me. But at the same time, they needed to come forward about those things, about the fact that I was trying to get help. See, these people are pissed off trying to pretend that I hid what it is that they actually did for me. No, I didn't. I said all of the things that they did for me, all of them, every single one of them. Now, they want to pretend like I pretended all of that stuff didn't happen because I also told the bad things that these people did. Candace Bondurant did some good things for me. But the fact that she didn't come forward to the police and to the courts about those things because she was afraid of police retaliation really creates a major issue for me. Trains coming by, you're going to hear two beeps. That used to be my favorite sound once. You're right, Pam. It's not fair. Guys, downstairs. Stop. It's not playtime. Go. They're getting antsy. They want to play. Ugh. And I'm surprised that train didn't follow protocol by honking its horn. The fact that I won't have access to body cameras when I go to speak to the police, and if they pull some bullshit, they'll turn off their cameras to do it. So when I speak to the police, I'm going to record it every time. Now, there were a lot of occasions where I didn't have access to do that. Some of those instances, my phones were too full of evidence to even take one more screenshot, let alone record a conversation. That happened up in Washington State. Pam, you can speak up for me. You can write your local senator and you can write Congress about what's been happening. You can take a look at the videos of evidence. There's one video I have called For Peaches the Liar. Peaches is one of the people who did the most for me. However, she didn't come forward. And the thing's downstairs. 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 Maybe just one minute. All right, so because nobody went in there with me to speak to those officers, and because they were allowed to turn off their body cameras, which I already knew was going to happen because I've dealt with the police before. I've dealt with police harassing and assaulting and so on and so forth with the homeless community long enough that I know what police do. I know their protocols. I know the tricks, loopholes that they use when you try to turn in a bad police officer. I already knew. That's why I said I needed someone to go in with me. When Natalie Bollinger disappeared, I needed someone to go in with me to prevent the officers from doing what it is that they did, which is take advantage of my disabilities, take advantage of my homelessness. Hello, Becca. And they took advantage of the term mentally ill. Now, those of you who have watched my videos, when you see me being calm, I'm still having a panic attack. But you also see me when I'm having a severe panic attack. And when I'm having my severe panic attacks, people get scared. Well, no, I'm having that severe panic attack because I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll have to deal with this for the rest of my life. That's what happens when you're not allowed to show up to your own court dates, when you were illegally prevented from showing up to your own court dates. See, I pled guilty to crimes that I shouldn't have had to plead guilty to. All of the crimes that I committed, literally every single crime that I have committed in the last 2 years, I committed to try to force the police to look at the evidence that they were selectively ignoring, because that evidence included the wrongdoing of other officers. If they lend an ear to just a little bit of it, they have to lend an ear to all of it. Now, they used the term mentally ill to prevent me from making a police report or showing evidence, to destroy my credibility, basically. But then when it comes to sentencing, then they use my intelligence to pretend that my disabilities do not exist. That includes my mental disabilities. My mental disabilities are from PTSD, not from autism. It's the way that you treat me because I'm autistic that gives me PTSD to begin with. I'm not allowed to get overwhelmed. Now, Dan Fabert judged me for yelling at Shannon. This is well before I ever met Shannon in person. The first time I talked to her, I was living in Sydney, Nebraska, and Desiree Leonard was living with me. She also goes by Desiree Cave and Desiree Airborne, and she's got 5 or 6 different aliases. She was trying to recover from meth. She was in a trap house in Cheyenne with a man named Kevin McGregor, who lives right across the street from the Camilla shelter there in Cheyenne. That's close to the truck stop. It's close to a lot of different things. Desiree was apparently living in the bathroom there. The pictures that she took, I assumed were, well, I didn't assume they were from the bathroom. I thought it was a room, but she took pictures of the bolt on the door, and this is not a place I want anyone that I know to be. The police in Cheyenne refused to take a report from me. That's what happens when you're called mentally ill. You literally will not get heard from the police unless you have someone to go in with you. That's why you have to have an advocate. Anyone who is called mentally ill has to have an advocate. And all these people who aren't looking at the evidence, who pretended like they were my friends, are like, oh, well, you need this and you need that. You need a lawyer. No, I can't get a lawyer unless I have an advocate. Anyone can advocate for somebody who is disabled. Anyone. I mean that. Now, if it's another homeless person, they're probably going to blow them off. You really need somebody in a house. But another homeless person will work if that homeless person isn't too afraid to go in. But most homeless people are too afraid of the police to go in. When this issue with Natalie and Alicia Bollinger and Maddie Boa first started, I didn't go to the police. That's because if you're known as a cop caller in the homeless community, you are ostracized and shunned. But the other thing is to the cops, because you hang out with the criminal element, because homelessness is a criminal act. It's illegal to be homeless. Now, it may not be written into the law specifically that being homeless is illegal, but every aspect of it is illegal. They make laws that make it illegal to live out in public. The blanket laws, there's 2 different types of blanket laws. When I talk about blanket laws, for the most part, I'm talking about laws that just cover everybody. Everybody who's homeless is covered by a blanket law. It's illegal for you to use the bathroom outside. It's illegal for you to sleep outside. It's illegal for you to use a blanket outside. However, there's also the laws about blankets in specific. The camping ban. It's illegal to use a blanket because of that camping ban, because you are covering up to try not to freeze to death. Because of this bad law, a lot of people that I know and love are dead. They're dead because between spending 60 hours of community service and over $400 in fines, or risking freezing to death, they got tired of paying all those fines. There was a guy who went by the name Face. Now, the thing about Face is that he'd been homeless since he was 13, and he finally got up and out, and he finally got clean off the drugs. And he had a job. He had a girlfriend who was going to CU, and that's Colorado University in Boulder, for those of you that don't know. Face got 3 camping tickets in 1 month. There is no way in hell that he's going to be able to do all of that community service and pay all of those fines with a job that you're going to get at an entry-level position. You're just not going to be able to do it. People say you're out there because you chose it. No. There are almost 4,000 homeless people in Boulder County. They had something called BOHO, Boulder Outreach for the Homeless Overflow. They provided floor space at some of the local churches for up to 200 people a night. And then there's the 170 something beds in the Boulder shelter, most of which are for transitional housing, people who are in special programs because they committed felonies. But if you didn't commit a felony or aren't a single mother, then you don't get special treatment there. You do what's called a lottery. And they also expect you to basically register with them over the internet. A lot of the homeless people don't have access to the internet, and a lot of the older homeless people don't know how to work the internet. A lot of you younger folks are like, what? They live under a rock? Hey, you know what? You guys try playing some of the original Nintendo games, all right? That's the world that we lived in. Some of those people didn't even have Nintendo. This technology stuff is not something that we grew up with. There's a lot of 3 to 5 year olds that have more understanding of my smartphone than I do. When it comes to getting the police to do their jobs, they use the term mentally ill to discredit you so that they don't have to do their jobs. And that's what the officers here in Chapel, Nebraska did. Before Natalie was killed, I'd gone to them repeatedly to try to get them to do their jobs. As soon as Natalie started threatening me with the cops, I started going to the cops. And they kept blowing me off. The fact is, Natalie's friends, like Tim Beeson, were harassing me and threatening me. And the police wouldn't do a goddamn thing. The issues that I have with the police aren't a civil matter. The issues that I have with public pretenders are not a civil matter. These people committed criminal actions. Tim Beeson committed criminal actions. And the police didn't care. The police in this town didn't care. And after Natalie was dead, they did everything in their power to cover up the fact that they didn't do anything about abuse against a mentally disabled person. By the way, I'm also physically disabled. My disability is PTSD. Most of the things that you guys attribute to autism, I want you to look up PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. One thing that you'll notice is that people who have been victims of long-term sexual abuse, long-term physical abuse, long-term neglect, long-term emotional abuse, and people with autism all have the same characteristics that all fall under PTSD. The things that they use, the criteria that they use to diagnose you with PTSD are the very same things that are common for somebody who has experienced these other types of abuse. Being autistic gets you abused. And then because you're mentally ill, by the way, autism is not considered a mental illness. It's a mental disability. Because of this, you don't have a say-so. You're not allowed to defend yourself in court. People are allowed to do whatever they want. Without an advocate, they can get away with it. Danica Garner, I was hoping that she would be my advocate, but she wasn't. She was playing friendly because, well, when it all comes down to it, she wanted to help to frame me and to force me into a severe panic attack that would make everything that they did okay. It's not okay. The way that homeless people are treated in the United States is fucking gross. And then I hear people say, well, they're all addicts. No, they're not. 75% of homeless people don't do drugs. That's a national statistic. And then you get to hear about how they're all mentally ill. No, they're not all mentally ill. Most of them have PTSD because most of them grew up in the system. Y'all are seeing this CPS stuff going on right now, right? How there's people in CPS nationwide being arrested, having to go to court because they lied in court, lied to police to have people's children stolen from them. People like Nancy Stopka, people like Mariah Johnson. Mariah Johnson is getting ready to plead guilty to crimes that she didn't commit. She was targeted for a reason. Nearly everybody that I mentioned in my videos in the state of Colorado were targeted by police. Nearly every one of them. And that includes Mariah Johnson. Now, you guys, I understand why Mandy Hughes is pissed off. She didn't want to be targeted. I understand why all of these people are pissed off. They didn't want to be targeted. Well, guess what? Neither did I. But I didn't have a choice in the matter. The things that I've had to do out of desperation, I did because what you're supposed to do, I tried first. I tried going to my bullies and asking them to stop. I tried going to the authority figures and I got blown off. I tried going to my friends and I got blown off. And I'm not allowed to be pissed off that I have to take the abuse. I was getting money because I am disabled. I got to listen to police officers in most of the places that I was at make fun of me and be condescending. Say, oh, well, I'd like to be able to. How do I get disability? I don't want to have to work. Fuck you, officer. I love working. I love manual labor like you wouldn't believe. When I was a tree cutter with Gary Jepson and his family, that was my favorite job ever. There's only one job that was a close second that could have been an even better job than that. There was a guy named Gary Smith, and I worked for him cutting up metal and scrapping metal, and that would have been a great job, but that guy didn't pay me. My last paycheck from him I never got. And before that, he wasn't understanding the fact that since he wasn't paying me on time, because he was too busy buying alcohol and getting drunk, that there were fines for me for not paying bills on time. Bills that exceeded $200 each time that he did that. Meanwhile, I am not making enough working for the man to be able to cover my bills. Now, mind you, this is over a decade ago, and a lot of people say, don't live in the past. Don't live in the past. Well, the past affects the present, and it affects the future. Because of the things that the Bollingers did and the police did in the past, I will never be allowed an honest future. I will never be allowed an honest court date in the future. I will never be allowed to defend myself in the future. I will have to go back to my predators and allow them to harm me again in the future in order to get my disability money back. What the police did to me was criminal, but it's not just them. The fact that every single public pretender that I had neglected to do their duty. They're getting paid by the taxpayers no matter what. You are paying them to do nothing, to not defend their clients, especially if they're homeless, especially if they're male, especially if they have the term mentally ill attached to them. When I was being tortured by the guards in the jails and by other inmates, some of them who were coerced by the guards in those jails, offered prizes for doing those things to me. One of the guys that I was in jail with, his name is Matthew, and I have his paperwork downstairs. The officer that I tried to turn in there, that officer tried to bribe Matthew with an extra lunch sack. This is easy to do. They barely give you enough food to eat. You're never full. I saw people repeatedly get assaulted in the jail. The police aren't going to do anything about it. They're not. I was assaulted on camera in the jails, and the police did nothing about it. There was one guy while I was in there, he was bragging about, in his words, how he got a retard to kill somebody for him. That's what he was claiming he was in jail for. And this guy had commissary. He offered a guy 3 packs of ramen noodles to beat someone up for him. And this guy wanted the 3 packs of ramen noodles, so he beat that guy up. Now, this guy didn't want to pay the 3 packs of ramen noodles. So he offered another guy 1 pack of ramen noodles to beat up the guy who he offered 3 packs of ramen noodles to. This very same inmate decided that he was going to wipe a cookie in his butt crack and give it to a mentally disabled individual who was also incarcerated with us. The guards were aware that this was going on. When I tried to turn in several of the guards, in specific, one of the guards named Officer McRae, well, Officer McRae was very much involved in getting other inmates to do things that they should not have been doing. When I tried to take it to her superiors, they denied me that right, outright ignored me. They refused to allow me to speak to an investigator the entire time I was in Arapahoe County Jail. The evidence that proves that these people are wrong and the things that they did to me were wrong, I don't have access to. And they won't give me access to. And that access includes the slander by people like Cara Johnson Miles. By the way, she was in Texas when she slandered my name, and that slander was allowed in my court date, and I was not allowed to speak in my court dates, any of them. I was not allowed to defend myself. I was not allowed to show evidence. But this woman, Cara Johnson Miles, who was heavily involved in fanning the hatred against me in these Natalie Bollinger groups, while pretending that she was going to help me. Her and Shelley Campbell worked on this together, conspired together, and then lied on court documents. But because public pretenders get paid whether they win or not, there is no incentive for them to do their jobs. And they don't care about their clients. If they actually cared, they wouldn't be public pretenders. Our system isn't just flawed. Our system works for the bad guys. Our system makes it so that the disabled are ignored unless they have someone go in with them in person. I needed someone to go in with me in person for a whole year before Natalie Bollinger was killed. Here's what I got to say to the police. Deputy Holloway, I hope you're the one good officer. I truly do. But if you're not and you're corrupt, I'm going to be after you too. I'm going to be after you getting a court date where you can end up in prison, where you can deal with the consequences. Now, there's evidence on my computer here and on my other one of Andrew Witcher sexually abusing someone. Also, of him forcibly raping his wife. She was going to leave him, but she decided to stick it out with him because she needs help. She's afraid of losing her kids because she neglected her children when her daughter in specific said, "Hey, Andrew molested me." She's already had her children taken once due to neglect. So it's understandable why she didn't do what it is that she planned on doing, which is leaving him. Now, the evidence that was on those phones that got stolen up there in Washington State, I don't have access to that evidence, most of it anyway, but I did take screenshots of the conversations about that abuse, and those are on my computer. And that's some of the stuff that I'm going to show Officer Holloway. Although it's in Cheyenne, which is a different jurisdiction, fact is I can't get to Cheyenne, and I can't trust the officers in Cheyenne, and I won't have internet access in Cheyenne. When Officer Holloway comes to speak to me, I'm going to have it live streamed on YouTube. It's going to be on YouTube for the whole world to see. I'm not going to hide any of it. My biggest regret is that I didn't have a camera on me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.